This is ODAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi friend, welcome to the ODAT Chat podcast. My name is Arlena and I'll be your host. In case you didn't know, ODAT stands for One Day at a Time. If you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, or you can get new episodes delivered right to your inbox by signing up for the newsletter at odatchat.com. If you're new here, this is a podcast where my guests and I talk about how to recover from alcoholism and many forms of addiction. I actually kind of use those two terms interchangeably. We typically spend the first half of the podcast on the backstory, but the magic is really in the solution, which is what we try to focus on. I'm looking to uncover the moments of clarity, the revelations, and the tools and practices for healing which lead to long-term recovery. Today's episode is brought to you by SoberLifeSchool.com. If you struggle with things like isolation, relationships, or relapse, I've got a course for you. Check it out at SoberLifeSchool.com. I'd actually like to invite you to try the free course called The Connection Cure Challenge, 7 days to building your tribe. We all need to have some friends. We get sober together. Sobriety happens through connection. So I would encourage you to get some of your friends to do it with you, just for like a little added accountability. So on the podcast today, I have a special interview with Duane Lauder, host of the Sober for Life Radio. Duane has a really special place in my heart. Anyone who dedicates their lives to trying to help others recover from alcoholism and addiction is really special to me. And Duane is an example of someone who has found a way that works for him, sort of outside the conventional 12-step process. So listen, over the 24 years I've been in recovery, I've seen a lot of different ways that work and a lot of ways that don't. So listen, in the end, if what you're doing works for you, then keep doing it. But if it doesn't, you better keep trying something else. So with that, please enjoy this episode with Duane. All right. Well, Duane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. This is our complete honor to be on here.
Oh,
I'm usually the one doing the interviewing, so it's kind of nice to sit back and get interviewed. So
now you can just chill.
Yeah.
So we're recording this on Zoom, and I can tell you have a really nice setup. You got a nice microphone and headset.
Yeah, and this is at home. This is just for. I've got our radio station set up to where I can stay home if I want to. So
that's awesome. So tell me, before we jump into the interview, why don't you tell me a little bit about your radio station?
We're a little bit different than most of them. We're a recovery music radio station. We like to use music as a healing tool. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Ricky Byrd?
I'm not.
Joan Jett and the Blackhearts guitar player. He's in recovery. Okay. And we kind of use the same concept that he does. You know, we use music because music's, it's a language the whole world understands, and it's a good healing tool. I mean, it can be used for a good positive way, and that's what we do. So we use music, and then we get our message out of hope. Let people know that there is hope. I'm living proof of it, and so is a whole lot of our listeners and followers, and then we have resources. We have resources to help people, treatment centers, sober living homes, even counseling services. That we have on board with us to help people, find recovery, stay in recovery, and be successful without using and without drinking, man. And, that was something I didn't think was possible. Right. Today I know different. And,
right. No, you're doing great work. And what is it's soberforliferadio.com. Is that how people find you?
Yeah. And that's how you can listen. We stream live on our website. So it's real simple to listen in. You don't have to go through a bunch of, other platforms. You can just listen right from our web. And we also have another radio station. I don't know if you knew that. We have a Christian radio station, and we play nothing but Christian rock and contemporary music on that radio station. And it also streams 24/7.
Wow.
And then right now, we just got that started within the last few months. So right now we just have one show a week, and it's on Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. And you can find that station at sflrentertainment.com.
SFLR Entertainment?
Yep.
Okay.
And if you like rock and roll with a good message, you're going to love the show, because we play Skillet and all that kind of stuff on there. We play neat stuff.
I will certainly leave links to all of this in the show notes on ODAT Chat. So, yeah, that'll be great to get that message out there. So typically what I do is I start out with, what do you do? Where are you? Where do you live? You don't live in California. Where are you? In Idaho, Ohio?
No, I am in Southern Illinois. I'm actually right across the river. I'm in Alton, Illinois, which is a historical river town, and I'm directly across from St. Louis. I'm right across from the St. Louis.
So, okay, very cool. Yeah. All right, and what do you do professionally?
Radio.
Yeah,
that is what I do now. Yeah, I
you used to do what, cell phone?
I used to be in the communications. I'm an electrician by trade. And when I got out of school, a friend of mine was involved in the cell phone industry when it blew up. I mean, it was when it first came out, it was analog. He was like, hey, I'm doing this pretty neat thing and pays really good. He says, you ought to check it out. So I went with him and I got hooked, man. I love climbing. I love being adventurous.
Not afraid of heights, huh?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. In fact, the highest I've climbed was a TV tower. It was in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was 1,300 feet is what I climbed.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah.
Just the thought of that gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'm not a fan of heights.
I love it. I love it.
Oh,
I can't do it anymore, because that gets to this. How I got started with this was I was on a job, and I broke my back in two places. I fell. I didn't fall we were 160 feet off the ground, but I fell to the end of my lanyards, which was about 5.5, 6 feet. And it was just enough to snap my back in two places.
Oh my God.
I can't do it anymore. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense. Yeah. We'll have to kind of go over that, because I bet you were prescribed a lot of pain medication and stuff, right?
Yeah. In fact, it was the first time I was introduced to opiates. And thank God I got a handle on that when I did, because I loved them.
Yeah, right. I've had surgery a couple times since I've been sober, and they're like little freebies. So you have to, it's very important to be careful with pain management. But let's start at the beginning. Maybe you can tell me, I would love to hear your story. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about your family of origin. Like, where did you grow up? What did your parents do for a living? That kind of a thing. We'll start there.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was adopted when I was 3 years old. My biological mother passed away with bone cancer when I was a year old. And at the time, we didn't have a whole lot of money. There was a lot of kids in my family, and my father at the time was an alcoholic and just a complete mess. He couldn't take care of us, so they put us into state custody. It was there were 4 of us total that went into state custody. And I guess the neat thing about the whole thing was they kept 2 brothers together when they separated us. So during foster care and all that, I stayed with one of my biological brothers. Mm-hmm. And by the grace of God, the family that finally adopted us decided they would take both of us. So I was actually adopted with my biological brother.
That's amazing.
And the other 2, we all got back together when I was about 20 years old, I think. No, I'm sorry. No. At 20 years old, I had met all of my family, my biological family. But I think I was about 15 when my family found me. And then I started to meet, my real brothers, my real sisters. And then over the years, I met all my cousins, and it was kind of neat. It was,
that's interesting. So the 4 of you, so you and your brother, so I would imagine, so you were 3. How old was your brother that you were with?
He was 6. He's 3 years older than I am.
Okay. So the 2 of you stayed together, and were you the youngest?
Yeah, I was the youngest of everyone. Yeah.
Youngest of four. And then
Well, there was more than four. There was only four of us that were separated. The other ones were old enough to either take care of themselves, or they were, my aunt and my uncles were able to take them because they weren't too young. You know what I'm saying? They were. I really don't know. I'm assuming, because I really don't know why the state did what they did.
How many children did your mother have?
Altogether, there's, let's see, Connie, Jack, seven of us.
Your mother had seven
brothers
children?
and sisters. Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, so she had seven kids, and only you and your brother, you were the two youngest, so you two stayed together, 3 and 6. And
we stayed together, and then there was two other ones that stayed together.
Oh, okay.
They were, and in fact, they were adopted together as well. They went to the same family.
Oh, okay. And did the two families that adopted you guys, did they live close by? Did you see your other two siblings at all?
We never encountered each other, but they were like 2 cities over. In fact,
that is amazing that they would separate you guys and then not even consider having the families get together so that y'all could maintain a relationship. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's how it was. That's how they did it back then. They didn't.
Yeah, what was this time period?
That would have been the early 70s when that happened.
Early 70s.
So I was born in 68. My mother died when I was a year old. So that would have been 69. And then I was in foster care for 2 years. So yeah, it'd been early 70s.
Wow, that's really interesting. And what was your relationship like with your adoptive family? Did you have a good experience with them?
I did. They were, I caused some problems, I guess, because of, being separated from my mother or whatever. I was a pretty crazy kid. We'll just say that. I got in a lot of trouble, did some dumb things.
How old were you when you started getting into trouble?
Probably pretty young, man, about 5, 6, something like that. Started, just acting up and just, had trouble in school. Always wanting to be the class clown, I guess. And, but but my parents were really, my adopted parents, I guess they put that into consideration because they were always helpful. They all, they got me counseling. They did this, they did that. My father was, the head chemist of Bristol Myers. He was a master chemist. So we were adopted to a fairly wealthy family. They were well-to-do, and nice. We were blessed.
Yeah, very good.
We were very lucky too.
Yeah, and your adoptive mother, she stayed home with the kids?
Yeah, she was a house mother, and
wow.
and she was a great woman. She later on became an alcoholic, which caused problems with specifically me because she took out a lot of her frustration and anger, I guess, on me with her alcoholism. She was a little verbally abusive when I was growing up. Never hit me or anything. I was never physically abused, but mentally a little bit from my mother. Yeah. She'd get, but later on I found out also that when she passed away, they found she had a brain tumor and she had it for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So
it affected her personality.
I did. I looked into that. And and they said that, with drinking on top of it, you know what I mean? It really puts them, it's not them. And, so I use that today as a comfort, that she really didn't mean to be the way she was. And
she couldn't help it. Yeah.
No.
But then again, the alcoholism doesn't help either, right? Yeah. Right. And your father?
She started doing that before the aneurysm and all that.
Oh, wow.
She was drinking pretty heavy, and caused problems with me as a child because she'd say some nasty things, and I'm not mad. I let all that go. I love her. I know
it's interesting. It's interesting when that happens, though, because it does shape who you are. right? It shapes who you are. It shapes
Yes.
who you think that you.
It had a major impact on my problems with alcohol and
Yeah.
drugs later on in life. I know it did.
Yeah. And as a
'cause
kid,
I started drinking at a young age. I saw.
oh, how old were you?
I was probably about 9 years old when I had my first drink.
Was your mother already
And
drinking?
I snuck up and got it out. Yeah. And I was stealing it out of her bottle of whiskey. It says she drank highballs. She loved ice and Seagram 7 and water. And so that was my first drink. I wanted to see, what that was. It was making her do the thing she was doing. So I tried it. And,
oh, wow.
And I automatically liked it. My first alcohol blackout experience was in junior high school. I passed out on the side of the road walking home from school. And the cops
walking home from school.
Yeah, because after school we all went over to a place we hung out at, and we had drank. I remember it like yesterday. We drank a bottle of Jack Daniels, and we're all in junior high, 7th grade, so we're can't handle our liquor for sure. I sure couldn't, but I drank a lot of it, and ended up blacking out and passing out on the side of a major road in our neighborhood, and the cops came and got me and carried me into my home, and that was my first experience with a blackout and just getting so drunk I didn't realize what I was doing.
And that was in junior high, but you had your first drink at 9 years old. So
yeah, 9 years old. Yeah.
So between 9 and junior high, did you have a few more? Did you try it more? Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to consider also, Arlena, I grew up in the 80s. You know what that's like. In the 80s, it was party time. I mean, it was, you know what I'm saying? All your friends from schools, families had a bar in the basement. It was party. It was party.
Yeah.
I had parents who smoked pot. You know what I mean? I remember stealing pot out of their bags. My friends and I stealing pot out of their bags and, and doing bongs in the, and all that. It was sociably okay in the 80s to party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Party we did.
Yes, we did. Oh my goodness. So, your dad wasn't really aware of, how did he react to your drinking?
My dad knew what was going on. I don't think my dad really knew what to do. He knew my mother had a problem. But he just didn't know how to handle that. That was something he didn't know. My dad was he had diabetes real bad, so he couldn't drink. He drank near beer. That's what he drank. He drank near beer a couple a night, maybe, on a weekend, and that was it. He wasn't. Never had a problem with drinking. So I don't think he really knew how to handle that. Because his wife, for one, was definitely, she was passing out in the hallways. Going to the bedroom at night, and he'd have to put her to bed. So. And then all of a sudden he starts noticing his son's having a problem with drinking, and I don't think he really understood how to deal with that. You know what I mean?
I don't think the information was as prevalent as it is now. Yeah,
and it was hush. You know what I mean? If somebody was drinking like that or doing heavy drugs, he didn't want that getting out. I mean, he wanted people to think he had the perfect family, and in upscale West County, St. Louis, you know what I mean? So a lot of stuff just wasn't talked about. And
not like it is now.
But he did try to get me help. He did try to get me help in treatment a couple of times. And I went to counseling services as a child. I remember the one I went to that I really liked too. It was called Kids in the Middle. And they're still doing stuff today.
Kids in the Middle. I haven't heard of, what is that about?
Yeah, it was called Kids. It was kids with having, behavioral problems. It was a counseling service. And I can't remember her name, but I remember my counselor that I saw. She was a really, really great lady and understanding, and it didn't help, but but I enjoyed going there. I really did. And then, you know what, I think, in a little way, I think it did help, because I'm thinking about it today. I'm thinking about, and counseling is a good thing. It is a good thing.
It probably planted the seed. I remember doing counseling too when I was a kid, and it planted the seeds. So.
Yeah, and we support that now on our radio show. I've got a counseling service out of Colorado, in fact, that that advertises with us. And
that's great.
I'm a huge supporter of counseling. I think it's a great thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, people need to talk about their problems. But let me just backtrack a little bit. So you ended up in treatment, but what led up to that? What made you feel like you needed to get treatment?
It wasn't. I felt like I needed it. My parents felt like I needed it, so they put me into treatment.
How old were you?
And that's probably why it didn't work. I think the first time I went, I was about 15 years old. The first time I went.
Young.
Yeah. And of course it didn't work because it wasn't something I wanted to do. I didn't have a problem. You know what I mean? All my friends were drinking and using drugs and listening to Iron Maiden and you know what I mean? So it wasn't a problem. You know what I mean? This is what we do. You know what I mean? And,
right.
And that, Arlene, that went on for 30 plus years, until I finally got sick and tired of being
sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. So walk me through that. So what led up to you deciding that, that you wanted to, get sober?
This wasn't too long ago. It was about, we're working on 3 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I had been on a crack binge and a drinking binge for about 2 weeks straight. And I just got to a point where I didn't like myself anymore. I didn't care about Duane anymore. I didn't think that, I wanted to leave this planet. I was to a point of wanting to kill myself. Suicide was a major thing going through my head. And I just felt like that would be the best answer for me, the best answer for everyone who's involved in my life. You know what I mean? Because I was just let's face it, you're on crack, you're drinking, you're stealing, you're cheating, you're lying, you know what I mean? And all those things all come to a head. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I just decided that I didn't want to be here anymore. And by the grace of God, the right person knocked on my door, who I trusted, and actually had 2 phone numbers in her hand. And she said, I talked to a friend of mine. A friend of mine gave me these numbers, and you need to call them. And one of the phone numbers that was given to me was Tim Ryan.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And
Tim's been on the show.
I'm forever grateful to Tim.
Oh.
Tim and I are really, really good friends. In fact, I'm getting ready to go to his event in a couple weeks, and I'm excited. I love seeing Tim, man.
All right. Where is he going to be speaking?
He's got an event up there in Geneva, the Annapalooza event. I'm sure he's going to speak 100 times before then. But that's the one. I'm excited to go to that because it's it's the 10th annual one, and I just seen him. We went to an event in Ohio. What was it? Not last weekend, the weekend before, and he was at that one speaking. And in fact, he pushed me up on the stage. He said, "You get up there and you tell these people what you're doing." And because I'm not much on getting up in these events and speaking, because I think it's out of fear a little bit, Arlena, because I don't want to get this big head. I don't want that to happen to me. I've seen it happen to people, and I don't want it to happen to me. So I go to these events to have fun. I go to these events to show people, our listeners and followers, that you can have fun in recovery. That's one of our messages.
Fun and recovery.
Yeah, without drinking and without using, you can have fun. I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and if I can do it, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I try to spread that message. It's true.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a drink in your hand or dope in your pocket to have fun. Period.
I totally agree. Yeah.
But back to Tim.
Sorry. Yeah. So you got 2.
Back to Tim. I want to talk. I want to talk a little bit about this. Yeah, because
Please,
Tim was the number I called, and Tim of course was Tim then. He was super, super busy, but he took the time out of his busy schedule to give me another phone number, and he said, "I want you to call this number. This guy works for me," and it was Mike Young. Between Tim Ryan and Mike Young, I'm sitting here today doing what I'm doing. And in fact, Mike Young had a whole lot to do with the radio station stuff, because he invited me and a friend of mine on his show in Chicago. And I like to say it like this. It's kind of like when you get on a Harley Davidson, you got to have one.
Yeah.
When I got behind the microphone, I had to have one. And now I got like 3 of these things all over the place. I got, you know what I mean? Got the radio station, got them at home, got ones I take with me, and I love it, man. And that's, we'll get to that. We were going to talk about how the radio station got started, but that's how it got born. It was
such a positive outlet. Yeah. So okay, so you got hooked up with Mike and Tim, and then but what was like your first 30 days of recovery like? Like, how did you get through that first period? Like, I don't know, were you still having cravings? Did you still have the obsession to use? How did you kick it?
Yeah. And if I was to tell you today that I still don't have a craving once in a while, I'd be a liar. That thought still gets into my head that, you know what, a beer sure sounds good. I know better today, and I know better than to act on that thought. But, you know, those thoughts, and in my opinion, I think anybody in recovery is going to, if it doesn't happen once in a while, eventually it's going to happen, and you better be ready for it. You know what I mean?
Right,
it's going to happen. You know, that thought's going to enter your mind where you're going to play with the idea of, you know what, a beer sounds good, you know, but you just have to remind yourself where you came from, where that took you. And that's where I'm at today. You know, I know better. I know one beer is going to end up being a million of them, and I'll be dead. That's all there is to it.
Right.
It's a matter of life and death for me.
Life and death. Yeah. But what happened for that first 30 days? Did they recommend? 12 step?
I did. Yeah. I went to AA and NA meetings. In fact, I did that for probably a good 6 months. Went to meetings and met some good people, and got a little bit of time under my belt, and a little bit stronger in my sobriety. And, you know, we had talked earlier about, you know, where I stand in my recovery. And I think AA and NA are a great thing. You know, it works for a lot of people. It really does. And we tell people, like, if we're dealing with somebody with state insurance, say, trying to get them into, you know, detox or treatment, especially treatment with state insurance, it's really, really rough. I'll tell people, go to a meeting. You know what I mean? Go to a meeting, surround yourself around other positive people that are, you know, striving to do the same thing, stay clean, sober one day at a time, get some phone numbers, and meet people in recovery, because it's important. It's important to have a network of people.
It so is. And
no matter what your recovery is, you know, we were talking about smart recovery or, you know, the Bible or whatever, you know.
There's refuge recovery. There's a lot of
surround yourself around as many of those people as you can, because you're going to need them. It's not easy.
Did you get a sponsor and work steps at all? Or?
I did have a sponsor, and I kind of work steps. The first 3 I got through, and then I went a different direction. I went more with religion, and so I went a little different direction after that.
Did you grow up? Did your family take you to church, and did you grow up with religion?
Off and on. Yeah, church has always been a part of my life. Yes, absolutely. In fact, we kind of skipped a section of my life. I actually went to prison in 2004, and I didn't get out until 2014.
10
so
years.
I did 10 years flat in Missouri in prison for choices that I had made while using and drinking. And this, I want to hit on this, because this shows the insanity of addiction and alcoholism. When I got out of prison, I thought, okay, 10 years has gone by. Maybe now I can drink. Maybe now I can have a drink.
Oh, wow. So you didn't drink or use the whole time you were in prison?
So I smoked pot once in a while, but to get stuff in there, it was pretty hard to do. It really was. It was hard. It wasn't, you know, is it there? Yeah. You know, we hear people say, well, you can get everything you can get on the streets in prison. Well, yeah, you can, but it's not as easy. And you better have lots of money because it costs a whole lot of money to get it. I could count it on both hands how many times in 10 years that I smoked a little bit of pot. Mm-hmm. And that was only because, somebody that I knew really, really well handed it to me, or it's very expensive, very expensive to do in there. So, no, there wasn't a whole lot of using or drinking while I was in prison. Like I said, I can count on both hands,
right. Okay.
10 fingers, how many times that happened.
And that was your first thought as soon as you got out?
But I did study, but that was, well, not as soon as I got out, but within the first week, I started thinking, man, a beer, you know what? I think I can do it. 10 years ago, I'm older now. I'm more mature. And
right.
Boy, was that a crock. My lands. I started right where I left off at.
Isn't that amazing?
Went straight to a blackout but kept going for a while. And that's why 3 years ago, all that happened. I got, the drinking opened up the door to doing some drugs, and I got a hold of some crack, and it was crazy. It was a mess.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so walk me through your religious experience. Tell me a little bit about your journey with God. Did it start in prison? Did you grow up with it in your... When I was a kid, I would go to a Christian church I think it was on Saturdays. It wasn't on Sundays. It was on Saturdays with some people down the street that the Coles, Kip Cole was his name, and his family would take me to church on Saturdays. So I was probably 10, 11 when I first started going to church and getting a taste of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And then off and on, it's always been a part of my life. What I mean? That seed was planted. I knew there was a God. I knew there was a purpose. I knew this. I knew that. And then I was getting ready to tell you, while I was in prison, I actually studied Hebrew and studied the actual roots of everything, how it all started. The epicenter, Israel, all that. And so for about 8 years, I studied Hebrew and got a much better understanding of what I believe in Christianity, and how much it's changed and been watered down and diluted. And that's the whole nother story that, yeah.
It just gave me a much better perception of what I actually believed in. You know what I mean? So yeah, God's always been in my life, always been a part. I didn't always walk side by side with him because I'm human and I'm a sinner, I guess you'd say. But I've always known he's there. I've always had a relationship with God. Always.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting though? So I grew up in the church too, but I wasn't able to abstain from drugs and alcohol. And I for me, I feel like I had all this internal pain, right? And I had this compulsion to drink and use. So when I got sober, I had to address, I had to peel the layers back and get to the root issue of the pain. Where was the pain coming from? Why the pain? And so I'm always curious about how people in recovery confront that pain, deal with it, resolve it, so that we don't have this compulsion to use, because the 12 steps talk about or pretty much every healing therapy is about addressing the root pain. So how can you walk me through what that was like for you? How did you uncover it and deal with it and resolve it?
Yeah. My take on that is, alcoholism and drug addiction is just a symptom of the problem. That's all it is, because I had to come to realize and understand that the problem was Duane. And the only way I was going to remove the alcoholism and drug addiction was to figure out what that problem was in Duane that was causing me to want to escape from everything.
Yeah, the pain, right?
And the pain, absolutely. And it all boiled down to, my childhood. Right. I had to let that go. I had to let go of all of that. I had to let go of the guilt of treating my adopted family I had to let go of all that. I had to let go of the guilt of treating my adopted
Guilt.
family the way I did.
So it was guilt.
A lot of guilt. And anger too. I was angry at the fact that, you know, I was told at an early age, not early, but I think I was 14 or 15 when my parents finally just decided, well, maybe if we tell him he was adopted, that'll help him out. Maybe that'll straighten him out. So I was told, can you pause me for a second?
Sure.
1 second.
You
can do this like Rob, can't you?
I'll edit this. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you were saying, your adoptive parents told you that you were adopted. So did that mean that you didn't know you were adopted?
At first I didn't. Up
so you
until
were a teenager?
Until I was a young teenager. Yeah. Well, but wait a minute. Cause my brother and I, you know, we were,
your brother was 6. So he knew.
We were real close. He knew something wasn't right. You know what I mean? And we both kind of, you know, questioned each other over the years about, well, we don't look nothing like them and we don't act like no.
Your brother at 6 years old didn't remember his family of origin? No,
because, well, for 2 years we were in foster care.
Oh, so he was 4 years old in foster care.
Yeah. But I think like now he tells me he remembers more than he realized he was remembered, if that makes sense. I don't know. I mean,
sure,
you know, I guess when you're young, you block a lot of stuff out. And
I guess, yeah.
But I was angry over that for a long time. I was angry at the fact that, you know, we weren't told and then we were told. And I don't know. I just had a confusing upbringing.
Confusing. Yeah.
It was very confusing. So I just had to let all that go. And I've let it go. I've been to my adopted families. In fact, not too long ago, this happened. I went to their grave and I spent a couple hours there, you know, and just apologized.
Your parents have passed.
Yeah. Yeah. My adopted parents have passed away. And I just had to let it go. And you know what? When I did that, everything came together, Arlena. Everything came together. I was at peace. That's the radio station came together. And I feel so much better about myself now. You know, I'm not lying to myself anymore. And that is possible. I lied to myself about stuff just so I wouldn't have to deal with stuff.
Of course, it was too painful.
Which would, in return, would have me lying to other people. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
Once I quit lying to myself and let all that go and just accept it for what it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's how it happened, and there's nothing I can do about it other than move on and enjoy the rest of my life. And that's what I've decided to do.
I'm curious about, you know, the letting go process, right? So how does is there a process of letting that go where you just decided to forgive? Like you just got too tired carrying all the anger and you just decided to surrender, accept reality, or, you know what I mean? I didn't actually. Yeah. And, you know, I didn't actually do it until a little over a year into sobriety that I finally decide that I was strong enough to go do this. And I went to their grave and I cried like a baby, you know, and it was tears that needed to come out a long, long time ago, you know, and I sat there by myself and I held their gravestone and I cried and I apologized and I let them know that, you know, that I appreciated everything that they had done and inviting me into their home and sharing me with their children and trying to give me a good life. And I let them know today you have given me a good life. You know, today I find myself doing things that my dad did, my adopted father. You know what I mean? Oh, really? Like what? He was real meticulous about yard work. And so am I now. You know what I mean? I want, you know, I want the edging around the trees to be perfectly straight. I want the sidewalks perfectly. And that was my father. Interesting. You know? Yeah. And I didn't realize until I really thought about it. I thought, yeah, I'm just like my dad, man. You know? Yeah. But it's cool. It's not like, oh, I'm like my dad. It's like, yeah, I'm like my dad. You know what I mean? Yeah, the good parts. Yeah. Well, and the truth be told, everyone's human. We're all struggling with something. And it's beautiful that you're able to see past your parents, their default defects, and just love them anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody's perfect.
Right. And I want to add this too. I did a lot of collateral damage on my adopted family as far as my brothers and sisters. And for a long time, they wouldn't talk to me, and I don't blame them. I caused my parents, their real mother and father, a lot of misery, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. But today I have a relationship with all of them. And my sister, in fact, my sister Tracy, we've always been really, really close because we partied. We were the two. He was a party animal, and so was I. So we were always really, really close. And she has 18 years clean and sober now.
Nice.
And so we hang out a lot. We do a lot of things together. For a while there, she couldn't be around me because I was drinking and using.
Right.
Today I go over there to her house and we hang out. And my other two brothers and sisters from that adopted family who would have nothing to do with me. Give me a hug, tell me they love me before they leave, and we go out to dinner, we do stuff, and so I want your listeners to know that if you are in a 12-step program, if you are in AA and NA, those promises that they talk about, they're true. They're real.
Yeah.
They're real. I've lived it, and I'm still living it every day. We went to an event, and I stood next to a sheriff, shook his hand. He patted me on my back, said, "Great things you're doing." And, I wouldn't go near cops. You know what I mean? And today I want to, anytime I pass by an officer, I make it a point to go out of my way to shake their hand and say, "Hey, thank you for what you're doing."
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
That helps me because I was one, and excuse my vulgarity here, but I was one of the ones that would say, "Oh, there's one of those pigs," or "Here's," you know what I mean? Because of the things I was doing in my life, the messed up life I was living, the lifestyle.
Yeah, you had to villainize them.
Absolutely. Today, no way. Today, I go out of my way and I say, "I am so appreciative for what you," and I tell them my story. If they have time, I say, "You got time? Let me tell you a little bit about me." Because this is a milestone right here, and I want you to know why. And I tell them. And they're just like, "That's so cool."
That you were able to turn your life around. Yeah, our prisons and jails are full of people that are actually alcoholics and drug addicts who are suffering and really need some mental health care. And
especially where we're at. I don't know. Well, I mean, even in California, they've closed down all the mental hospitals. And where are they putting them? They're putting them in prison.
In jail.
I saw.
Prisons, yeah.
I lived with them. You know what I mean?
I bet you did, yeah.
There's a lot of people that could, if they were to get some psychological help, they'd probably make it out here on the streets. But it's not available, and it's not there anymore. It's a shame, but
it is, yeah. And so tell me about what recovery is like for you today, because you have dedicated your life to helping others recover. And
the best tool I ever learned right there is to give.
Right. Be of service and help somebody else, right? Whatever you give comes back to you tenfold. That's
tenfold.
Yeah, you can't outgive God, right?
I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the feeling inside. When you learn to give, the feeling that you get when you see that person's desperation lifted off of their face, the worry leave them.
Yeah.
Know that you played a role in that is just absolutely the most powerful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. Ever.
Best high ever. Yeah. I just feel like, we do so many things that erode our self-esteem, right? Yeah. And then we have an opportunity to do service, and that service is actually something that builds our self-esteem. It seems to be built into just about every recovery program that I am aware of, that there is some sort of, so it's about sharing your feeling, like sharing the secret, and then helping somebody else, resolving all that pain. And it's amazing, just the service that, especially the service that you do, right? You're reaching a lot of people. How did your radio show come about?
When I broke my back in two places, I couldn't work anymore. And I decided that I wanted to do something to give back, and to try to earn money to stay alive, in the world.
Yeah.
So I decided that I was going to start a radio station and focus it on helping other people get into clean and sober living homes once they complete treatment. Because in my opinion, treatment is a place for somebody to go and to get some tools, of course, and also to just clean their body out, to start thinking a little bit more clear. Because 30 days, come on, 30 days is not a long time.
No, it really isn't.
When you walk out the front doors of that treatment center, that's when life's going to hit you in the face, and you better be ready for it. And one good way to be ready for it is to go into clean and sober living and stay there for 6 months or a year. You know what I mean?
6 months to a year. Is that kind of what you recommend?
Yeah. And stay focused on recovery and around, other people doing the same thing in a safe environment. I mean, accountability is important for a lot of people. I was one.
Oh, absolutely.
Accountability is important. And in fact, this radio station for me is somewhat accountability, because I've got a lot of listeners and followers. And this runs through my mind. When those little thoughts I was telling you about enter my mind about, beer sounds good. One of the things that comes through my mind today is I'm going to let all these people down if I go drink.
Right.
All these people that look up to what we're doing here at Sober for Life Radio, I'm going to let all these people down.
Yeah.
And you know what? It works. So I'm going to keep letting that thought enter my mind, because it works.
Accountability is huge. And what you're really doing is you're setting up an environment for success, right? Yeah. There's this book that just came out by this guy, Ben Hardy, I met not too long ago. He wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And he's actually a foster parent. And he was talking about, like, his foster kids were in a home with parents who were, I don't know if they were alcoholics or drug addicts, but that whole addiction thing. And so he set up this environment for these kids, and now it's a positive environment with structure, and they're flourishing. And I feel like as people in recovery, we also need to we need to set up an environment to, support our success. So it sounds like that's what you've done, and that's what you encourage for. So treatment, SLE for 6 months to a year, and then designing a lifestyle of accountability with people in it that'll hold you accountable.
And we try to be real cautious on the sober living homes that we send people to. Like, I personally go to them, and I meet the people in the homes to make sure that it's a safe environment. And we have several that we use on a regular locally that I'm in contact with the people pretty much every day that live there. You know what I mean?
So the people that live there, or the people that are managing those homes?
Well, Oxford House, I'm sure you heard of Oxford House.
Sure.
That's one of the ones that we use because it's pretty much one of the few we have around here. But the ones that they have here are set up really good. I don't know much about, other places other than, up in the Chicago area, we use a few up there also that I know all the people that are staying there. Okay. And I keep track of that because you have to.
Yeah.
I don't want to send somebody to some Oxford House, not saying that they're going to be on the up and down or whatever, but you never know. And I want to make sure before, talk to the people that I'm used to talking to.
Right.
Make sure the house is still going good and all that. So
what makes a good, I'm not that familiar with, we call them SLEs, the sober living environments.
Yeah.
But I've never lived in one.
Structure.
What kind of structure?
They need to make sure they have to go to meetings.
Okay.
As being forced, so many meetings a week. They have to make the house meeting. They have to have a job. They have to hold a job.
Okay.
What we will do is when they get out of treatment, if they don't have any money and they have exhausted all avenues of getting any money, we actually raise the rent and deposit for them for 2 weeks. We raise $100 deposit and $200 towards the first 2 weeks of rent. That gives them time to get a job and start paying their own way, because we're not going to keep paying their rent. You know what I mean? It's
self-supporting by our own contributions.
Life on life's terms. It's time to get a job, and it's time to, you know what I mean? But the home itself, make sure they go to meetings every week. If they have to get mental health, they make sure they go to their mental health meetings. And just accountability, you know what I mean? For whatever it is. If they're on parole, you got to go to your parole officer. If you're on probation, you got to go to your probation officer. When they say you need to be there, you need to be there. And if they don't follow these rules, then they're not going to be able to live there.
Right. Okay.
And it's life on life's terms. It's not too much to ask. It's something you're going to have to learn. to be able to live on your own. So,
Yeah. So, okay. So good structure.
But I think that structure in life is better than you going back to where you came from and falling straight on your face, 2 days after you get out. Because that's generally what happens if you go back to your old stomping ground.
Yeah. You go back to your old environment. You behave in the same way.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Okay. So the structure and so they have to go to the meetings. Are they required to do any kind of service during that 6 months or a year in the sober living environment?
No, it's not a requirement. They
encouraged or
it's probably not.
Okay.
I don't know for sure about that, but they've never brought it up to me, so I'm going to say no.
Okay. And let me ask you,
but they're going to be pretty busy. I mean, if they're working a job, and if they got to go to 2 meetings at least, I think it's 3 meetings actually a week, 3 meetings a week, and then they have to make the house meeting every week. So they're staying pretty busy.
Yeah. So meetings almost every day. We talked a little bit earlier before we started the recording about anonymity. And that was one of the things that I struggled with when I started the podcast is, whether I should be anonymous about my recovery or not. And I've been sober for 24 years and I will share.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Inspiration right there.
Listen, I've crashed and burned pretty early.
Yeah.
Couldn't hold it together. Crashed and burned pretty early. And then, cool. But it's interesting because I've been talking to some people that the online recovery community and the awareness of the solutions, right? Getting into service, taking inventory, taking responsibility for yourself, changing your thinking, really finding a higher power.
I can answer this. I can answer
this.
Go
ahead about the anonymity.
Anonymity? What is that?
Right. I wasn't anonymous about my drinking, so
I wasn't too ashamed about saying, "Hey, I need a ride to the crack house," or "I need a ride, to the liquor store to get a 30-pack," and so. Yeah. In fact, I was very boisterous about it. So, I want to be very boisterous about my recovery and let people know.
Yeah.
I
think it's important to sort of raise the flag and say, hey, I'm in recovery. And if you know somebody that needs help, I'm here.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
It's, and it causes stigma, the anonymity to me, I think it causes a stigma on it. And then, people need to be educated and it needs to be educated in the public because these kids nowadays, children especially, man, our young teens and stuff, man.
Yeah.
Heroin today is not like it was back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? It's
pharmaceutical grade.
It's a concoction of death. Yeah. And it's just a matter of time before you get that dose and you're going to go to sleep. You're not going to wake up and it's over. And it's a matter of life and death today.
Yeah. And I think we need to bring recovery out of the shadows and
absolutely
bring it into the light so that people know that there's a solution and there's a place to go, there's a way out.
Like this. It's the same thing with, the homosexuality, how it's came out of the closet and it's more open to the public. And by doing that, there's been a lot more success with the AIDS epidemic and all that stuff. So why would you not do the same thing that was done with that with a addiction epidemic that's going on?
Yeah, it crosses all socioeconomic boundaries. Bingo. I mean, addiction does not discriminate.
Absolutely not. And this radio stuff has proven that to me. I've seen all walks of life that have
all
been
walks of life
or alcoholics.
Yeah, I think it's so important to bring it out and to normalize it. Our mental health professionals are, ready and able to help people with, and I think it's just the stigma of having mental health issues. People just don't take care of their mental health the way they do their even physical health. But it's, it's like your mind dictates how you think, the decisions that you make, it dictates how your life is going to be. So we really need to, take care of our minds. And it's just, I'm with you. I obviously agree. I finally came to the conclusion that, you know what, I think it's more important for the message of hope and recovery to be out there and to help people find ways, real practical ways of uncovering their pain and dealing with it and resolving it so that they don't have that compulsion to use.
Now, I would also like to add one other thing. To the old timers who might be listening to this podcast, I will respect your anonymity.
Yeah.
I won't, if you say, hey, I don't want this said, okay, then it won't be said. But I'm going to tell you all about me, whether you like it or not. That's all there is to it. And I do on our radio shows, I tell people I'm not.
No, of course.
I don't have anything to hide. Secrets are dangerous.
Yeah. I don't tell everybody everything, but I don't have secrets anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Well, confession is good for the soul.
There's personal stuff that I don't share, but I'm talking, as far as anonymity, I consider that myself as a secret. And I don't keep secrets no more.
Yeah, I get that people need a safe space to share their stuff. Like I like that that was really good for me in the beginning to have a safe space where my business wasn't going to be out on the street. But I do feel like there is a time and a place to come out and share with others what's really going on, so that people who are suffering.
Podcast and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really good. It's really amazing.
We can do what we want on our own podcast and radio station.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of neat.
Well, listen, I typically want to be respectful of your time, and we're about to wrap up here. So my usual wrap-up question is, since the podcast is called ODAT Chat, ODAT stands for One Day at a Time. Do you have a daily or weekly practice that helps you stay sober?
Absolutely. Every single morning when I wake up, the first thing I do before I turn computers on, before I mess with the radio station, is I ask God, please help me to make it through one more day. Help me to not drink and not use again today. And every day. And it works. Every day. And it works. And then I jump into the radio station stuff. And that keeps me focused, on my recovery, because there's people asking questions, there's people needing help, there's people, but I have fun doing it because I have my headphones on with, Ted Nugent pumping through there or whatever, so I don't burn myself out. I can't, with SoberLifeRadio.com, I cannot burn myself out because I am a complete music buff. So it's perfect. It's a perfect sync for me.
It really engages your passion and your service, and it's such a great life's purpose. And
life is good.
Yeah, you're doing such great work. And I thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and to share your Sober Life radio show. I'll certainly leave links.
I need to get you on our show, and it'll be a little different. Our show's a little risky because we're live, so we just wing it. You know what I mean? I can't get in there and edit it. We just do it, and but I'm really good at that.
Okay, no, I'm totally game. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah,
it would be a lot of fun. And we put music in there, and I'll get a hold of you, and you tell me what kind of music you like, and we'll add that in there for breaks, and we'll do an hour show on our show here real soon. Let me get these events out of the way.
Of course, you got your plate is full right
I think I got 3 more events, and then I want to mention.
Sure.
Anyone listening, we have a huge interview coming up. August 28th, we're going to have Mark Kendall on our show live. And we'll have it posted, the time and all that, but it will be the 28th of August. He is the founder and lead guitarist of Great White.
Oh, wow.
He's in recovery, and wants to talk all about it. So
awesome.
I've been in contact with him last couple of weeks, and he's excited about it. He loves what we're doing. He went on our website, and he's like, man, he says, in my eyes, you're a rock star.
Oh, that's sweet.
It felt so good to hear something like that, and it's going to be huge, man. It's going to be a great show.
I'm super excited for you. Yeah, that'll be great.
We've actually had, in the past, quite a few big stars. We've had Carmine Appice, Ricky Byrd, Roxy Petrucci from Vixen, we're still working on getting her on here. She went on tour in Europe, so that got thrown out for a little bit, but she's going to
Right.
come on.
Yeah,
So
you have to be patient with these things. I've discovered is that,
you do.
anybody worth having is going to be super busy. And so sometimes it requires some rescheduling, but stay the course. You're doing great work. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll look forward to being on your show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll get in touch with you as soon as it slows down, and then we'll get it scheduled and we'll get you on here and we'll have some fun.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Duane. You have a great day.
Right. Thank you. You do the same.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.